Welcome to the Friends of Israel's Jew and Gentile podcast. I am your host, Chris Katulka, and with me is none other than the Jewish sage himself, the one, the only Mr. Steve Herzig. How are you, sir?
Relieved.
Why's that?
I'm relieved because religious kids are less anxious than atheist kids.
This is big news.
This is huge news, Chris.
That's right, and because anxiety among youth is out of control right now.
Out of control.
Because of the devices that they use and the pandemic. But what scientists are finding is that religious kids who go to church, kids who go to synagogue, have tradition, rituals, and community. And this is so important.
It is so important. And in the video that I saw, Chris, the guy was appealing. He said, look, if you're atheist, you got a big job.
Yeah.
you got to make sure your kids aren't anxious. And he goes back to 2012.
And I think that guy's an atheist who came up with it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's right.
And he goes back to 2012, and he said, at first it was kind of even, and then in 2012, the gap exploded. And he said a lot of it has to do with the phones and all that kind of thing. And Chris, you and I here at the Jew and Gentile podcast, which is sponsored by Equip under the banner of the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry, we don't talk about religion. We're not much into religion. We're much more into relationship. Mm-hmm. But we know the conversation outside is always religious versus not religious. And that's why this article particularly interested me because, well, first of all, my people are known for being anxious. We're anxious about everything. We're worried about everything. In fact, we worry about people who worry.
Is anything okay?
Is anything okay? And so I was kind of relieved. Oh, this is good. You're raised to go to church every Sunday, or you're going to synagogue. The sense of community, the sense of connection lowers the anxiety.
And the cortisol levels go down.
We know that Charlie Kirk was advocating Shabbat, one day a week to turn off everything. All of a sudden, the Jewish people are smart.
That's right.
All of a sudden, what happened? God always knew. Before there were phones, God said, shut everything off.
That's right. He saw the phones.
Although when you're in Israel, I have to say, I became anxious when I got on the Shabbat elevator. Every single floor. This is going to kill me.
Well, Steve, I thought you were going to say you're relieved because you're not the only Jewish guy on the Jew and Gentile podcast today.
And today, I'm fantastic. I'm no longer a minority.
That's right. And that's why I'm going to bring up the video here and welcome in Shmuel Bowman, who is the Executive Director of LifeShield. We're going to talk about LifeShield. And he's also an ordained rabbinical, I have to throw that in there, Scribe. So when you see the mezuzahs on the door and you see all of the areas of prayer that the Jewish people do, it requires a scribe, and you diligently do that in Israel. That's right. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, you are right. You are absolutely right. It's a joy to be here with you guys in this.
We are so happy you're here.
Hey, well, listen, you just heard Steve's rant for a minute about the anxiety of Jewish people.
I did.
Okay, can you identify with that? Because now he's not the only Jewish voice here, and what we know is that when you have two Jewish people together, they say, or a Jewish person says, "I'd like to give a second opinion." Now's your chance, Shmuel, to give a second opinion.
Yes, and we'll still not come to an agreement. It's anxiety is something to definitely worry about.
What are your thoughts when you hear what we talked about? The idea that the studies being done now are showing that religious kids, whether they're going to synagogue, whether they're going to church, whether they like going or not, probably.
It doesn't matter whether they like, just the idea of the same thing every week. There's a certain resonance to it. There's a certain pattern to it. They know ahead of time, it's Shabbat, or it's going to church. They know, Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday.
That's right.
They know.
That's right. That's a good one.
There's a concept in Hebrew. It's called shigra. And shigra has to do with having some boundaries, having some normalcy. The word shigra, in Hebrew, the word shigra, amud ha-shigra, literally means your spinal cord.
Really?
Which is the very thing that is holding up your body. And so while your hands may be flaying around and holding a coffee in one hand and your phone in the other, and while your legs may be trying to walk and your eyes are trying to keep your concentration while driving, your spinal cord is doing its job and saying, I don't know what the rest of this body is doing. I don't know what that right toe is up to. All I know is I'm doing my job and I am keeping things straight and organized so the rest of this body can function. And I think that that's a very good example. So in Israel, especially after we've come away from a very, very unstable time, you're coming out of a war, everyone says the same thing. Chozrim l'shigra. We're returning to what? Order. We're returning to some semblance of structure. So it makes a lot of sense that children, whether they admit it or not, are going to say, in their hearts, they're going to say, well, yeah, I feel a lot more calm, more comfortable, knowing that there are boundaries, knowing that there's a structure. I can't identify why necessarily. I may not even like it. But with all the things going on, distractions going on, there's a place that I can be centered at. And so it makes sense that would be the case.
Yeah, it's the big ones were ritual, traditions, and also community. Those were the big three. And it's funny because Shmuel, I know that rituals and traditions in Judaism are incredibly important. And I think as evangelicals, sometimes we run from those words, tradition and ritual. We like the word community, but really we have those too. You like you said, you wake up on a Sunday morning, and I always tell my kids when they go, I don't want to go to church. I say, we're a church-going people. That's what we do. We get up in the morning on Sundays, whether we like it or not, and we go to church because this is where we believe the best place for us to be one day a week with fellow believers for community. And the ritual is there too. We take the Lord's Supper. We do these things that identify us with God. And so whether they like it or not, I think it's really interesting that an atheist is showing that going to church, going to synagogue, having those routines connected to God, connected to community, can change a young adult's life 100%. So,
and not just a young adult. It starts at that young adult or that child age. But we've heard stories, thinking of one in particular of an Israeli soldier, an IDF soldier, who survived an incredible attack during the Yom Kippur War in 1973, in which he was, inside Syria, surrounded by enemies. He had been shot very, very seriously. He was losing a lot of blood. For all objective reasons, he should have died. And he started thinking about all sorts of different ideas. He's obviously an adult and he has a career and he's thinking of different things he can focus on. And suddenly he finds himself tearing. He finds himself crying. And he realizes, what is he thinking about? He's thinking about going to synagogue as a child, holding his grandfather's hand as they're walking to Rosh Hashanah services. And the same thing that he would do year after year, and the fact that his grandfather would be leading him there. And the end of the story is he woke up in an Israeli hospital and survived and wrote about his experience.
Wow.
And that's a story that's repeated often.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And we think about this atheist guy saying, what are we going to come up with? Chris, what are they going to come up with?
Yeah.
You got to come up with something that will bring community together. What does it say in the New Testament? Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves. Do not, and Chris, you and I have talked about this with COVID, how some believers liked COVID, not so much the disease as much as, instead of having to go to church, I could Zoom.
That's right.
And Zoom was okay, initially when they didn't understand the disease and all that. But now it's time to meet again. And there's some people my age who are saying, you know what? Putting my feet up, staying in my jams, drinking coffee.
Nobody hates it.
They don't hate it.
Nope.
Well, now I'm not saying they're atheists, but I'm saying don't do that because you're going to get more anxious. Believe it or not, you're going to get anxious. But Chris, we had that, we need that laugh today of the protest that these people are anxious.
That's right.
This particular video, I imagine this guy, as he's running away, we'll show it in a minute. He's probably pretty anxious. He's got an Israeli flag. They're pretty pumped up. There's a fire, and what happens?
Well,
Chris?
I just want to say this to me, all of us are here because, we value God's word. And in God's word, it says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And sometimes God gives us a little video to see what that actually might look like.
And he does it like that.
That's exactly right. So I'm going to go ahead, Steve, and play this and make sure our sound is good. We're good there. And I'm going to show you this video here that we found online.
But for those listening, give them a background, tell them what happened.
Well, essentially, this guy's going to he's at a protest against Israel. They're holding Palestinian flags in the background, and they're going to lift up this big,
and
giant...
by the way, they're masked up, Chris.
Yeah, they're I don't know what they're...
Germs from the fire. I don't know.
All right, so here, you can watch it here, okay? Maybe it will play. There we go. All right, the fire is consuming the Israeli flag. And he's caught on fire.
The guy caught on fire.
That's right, exactly.
Instant justice.
Shmuel, I know we joke around with that, but I mean, there is, like Steve said, a little instant justice there. This is more common and prevalent around the world than we'd like to admit.
Oh yeah, and it's a certain. I mean, I hope the guy's okay.
Yeah, this is it. This is the difference, right here. The Israelis. I hope he's okay. He's burning our flag.
He's burning our flag, but the guy
is anything okay here?
He ends up getting caught on fire. The fire spreads from the flag rather quickly. It looks like wind kicked in, and
notice how the people are helping him. Nobody's helping this guy.
They're like,
That's
we're
right.
staying away from this guy. We don't want to catch fire. So hope the guy's okay, but clearly it's you got to be careful about who you mess with.
That's right. That's right. I think we're thinking of a divine being here.
And we're not laughing at the pain of we're just laughing at the justice. It's funny. I'm sorry. It's funny. I do hope he's okay.
No, it's true. You have to really, really, really be careful when people are out there and they are cursing Israel and they're spreading lies about Israel, which by extension they're expressing lies and discrimination against Jews. Hello, you got to watch it, and I'm not saying watch from above.
Yeah,
things might just be happening in your life that aren't going to go too well.
That's right,
and you start connecting the dots. So this should be like, you want to do that flotilla?
Yep.
Big warning.
Well, even, I don't know if you saw the video. I didn't think this one would be appropriate to play because that one's kind of funny. And like you said, we hope he's okay. But there was a Turkish parliament member who got up in their parliament and started criticizing Israel. He had a big Israel thing that was behind him. He was criticizing. And then all of a sudden, the guy had a heart attack and died. He just, there's a video of him. He just fell right over. Yeah. So, I do think there's something to it. Yeah, it's very serious.
It's very, very serious stuff. It's very serious stuff. And there is, in some cases, that din v'onesh, that punishment comes right away.
Yeah. Bada bing, bada boom. But Chris, they're smiles, not from laughter at the expense of somebody else. We have some smiles at Friends of Israel, actually a Zoom picture that you sent me that I'm pretty excited about that has to do with my grandmother's homeland.
That's right. And I hope
Poland.
I hope this put a smile on your face. I hope it puts a smile on Shmuel's face as well to see young Friends of Israel's young adults. There's a picture that we just put up. If you're not watching on YouTube and you're listening on a podcast, it's about 7 or 8 young adults who are all getting geared up, Shmuel, on our Encounter Poland trip to partner with our Polish team to learn about Holocaust education in Poland. And so
this is the second.
This is the second trip.
Second one. Is there a march? They're going to miss the march.
They'll miss the March of the Living. That already happened.
Yes.
But this one's running in the summer, and these young adults will visit all of the relevant sites of the events of the Holocaust. They'll hear from expert individuals, and then they'll also do volunteer work while they're there as well. So all of that makes up an opportunity for these young adults in a world where Holocaust denial is on the rise to come home with fresh eyes on the realities of what's going on. And some of these young adults are even considering serving with Friends of Israel. And so this will give them a better understanding of really how the Holocaust has had not only an impact 80 years ago, 70 years ago, how it continues to have an impact on the lives of some. But Shmuel, I thought maybe this might bring a smile to your face to see young adults. We need young adults like these.
And they're smiling.
Yes, smiling. Next generation getting ready to be advocates for Israel and the Jewish people.
Well, these are the faces of young adults who, when, and I didn't say if, I said when they are confronted on campus, because they will.
Yes.
And when they are being confronted by the absolute, the lies that the Holocaust did not take place or did not take place on that grandiose level that we know is to be such a horrific black mark in our history, that they're being able to say, I saw it. I saw the evidence. I was there. And that can't be refuted. Mm-hmm. So they are, in a sense, ambassadors. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to see their smiles, to see that these beautiful faces are going to be the ones who are going to be able to turn to those who are spreading lies and saying, actually, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. You're wrong.
Yep. And I know that there are some, I won't pick them out in that picture, but they are on campuses like Western, I think, in Ontario, and where anti-Semitism is on the rise. And they stand against that anti-Semitism. But, it's not often that you find young adults who, during the summer, want to make this their summer trip. It's a serious. They come back changed from these kind of experiences. But this is instead of going to the beach, instead of going out and what most people do, they're getting an education and understanding on the Holocaust to better love and support their Jewish friends. And so anyway, Steve, I'm glad that you brought this up because this is important. And some of the things that they like to do too, just to connect you with everything that we have here going on at Friends of Israel, Steve, it's free stickers.
Free stickers. And very important, if you want 50 free stickers, you text us at 424-1948. That's 424-1948.
Do you know about our sticker, Shmuel?
No.
All right, we give away
do not.
50 free stickers.
Go.
There's
Your
one of
free
them.
One.
Whoa.
We give away 50 free stickers that support Israel and the Jewish people. It's a tangible way for people to stick I love Israel on the back of their phone or on their water bottle, on their Bible. And we've handed out, Shmuel, I calculated, we're over 60,000 stickers. They're posted everywhere from Rome.
Around the world.
To Ireland, from Canada, United States, down to South America. It's just a way for people to say, I love Israel and the Jewish people without having to say anything. And really, it sparks conversation, some of them good, some of them not so good. But they're bold about their support for Israel and the Jewish people. And one of the ones I love the most is pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
In fact, Shmuel, we had a lady who wrote in, she's a school teacher, and her school had a policy, no flags allowed. And she had a sticker that she had, I think, on her water bottle. I don't remember, Chris, but it was the flag of Israel. I support Israel. And they said, we're sorry, you have to remove that sticker. And so she's, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. So instead, she got, I pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yep.
She was allowed to use
allowed
that
to
one.
do that. That was in Ireland.
That was in Ireland.
That's amazing.
So if you want to get 50 free stickers right now to support Israel and the Jewish people, you just text me. It's going to come right to my phone, so I expect it to buzz, okay? 424-1948. And also, don't forget about our free classes that are coming up May 14th and 15th next week. I want to share with you, Pastor Tommy Nelson's going to be doing the 70th week of Daniel for beginners, not for dummies, but for beginners. And that's going to be a great class for you to plug into. It is actually... you can get it for free by going to our website, foiequip.org.
Chris, you got to talk a little bit about Equip in general. Equip is the kind of a North American ministries and covers a lot of different ministries, but Equip, our courses are listed. If they go to foiequip.org, what will they find?
Yeah, when they go there, you can get online classes, you can get training materials that are there, you can get access to the podcast, and you can even, Steve, you ready? Don't be a schnorrer. You can donate, okay?
That's right.
You can donate while you're there.
We give out 50 free stickers. We don't ask for any money, except sometimes we do.
That's right. And we bring along amazing individuals like Shmuel Bowman, who's like, can we get to this already? But if you would like to connect more with us, foiequip.org and text us at 424-444-1948. All right, Shmuel, we're here. We arrived. Welcome.
Thank you.
You know,
This is why we brought him here, Chris.
Operation it was once called Operation LifeShield, is now LifeShield. You're the executive director. Why don't you connect our listeners? You've changed your name. Maybe you can give a reason for that, but connect our listeners to your outreach, your mission, this nonprofit that Friends of Israel has supported over the years. And our donors have been tremendous in supporting LifeShield. So I'll give you the floor for LifeShield, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, Operation LifeShield was actually started 20 years ago, 2006. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary. And it was a response to the Second Lebanon War, where Hezbollah at the time was over a period of 30 days, was launching about 100 rockets a day and displaced about 300,000 Israelis from northern Israel. Again, this is 20 years ago, not last month.
Yeah.
Even though we're also familiar with that. And there was a response by really a group of citizens, Israelis, some Olim, immigrants from the United States and Canada, who basically said there's got to be something that we can do about this. And we approached the army and said, "What do you need?" Isn't that a wild idea that you'd actually show up and say, "Hi, we're here. What do you need?" And we were told that the whole dynamic of how people go to shelters is going to change. Okay, because until that point in time, you'd be running to an underground bomb shelter. You'd have lots of notice. You'd bring your sleeping bag, your comic books, whatever you need, and you'd set up in an underground bomb shelter. Well, now what they discovered is that it wasn't going to work that way. 30 days in a bomb shelter, you're not going to spend 30 days in an underground bomb shelter. As a matter of fact, all of the people who were killed during the Second Lebanon War were those who actually left their underground bomb shelters for, getting some air, going to the bathroom, going for a shower. And so the idea was, what can, Chris and Steve and Shmuel are sitting around having a coffee or having a conversation. The siren goes off. We're going to leave everything on the table. We need to run to somewhere that's accessible. We need to spend about 10 minutes in there, let the danger pass, and then do what? Return to our lives. In a sense, it's about living as normal as possible in an abnormal situation. And in order to do that, we needed to have safe, secure, above-ground accessible bomb shelters. And we said, Hineni, here we are. We'll do it. And so we became the first NGO, non-government organization, to step up and actually start raising funds and ordering and placing bomb shelters in Israel. At the time, Operation LifeShield. Operation denotes a short-term campaign to address a rather limited situation. And now here we are 20 years later, and we realize that this isn't going away. Mm-hmm. The need for bomb shelters and other security projects is something which is a part of the day-to-day life of Israel. And last I checked, our enemies are still there. Mm-hmm. There may be ceasefires, and there may be, understandings that go on. But at the end of the day, as long as they still have weapons, and as long as our enemies are still determined to attack us or have terrorist organizations within their midst that are uncontrolled, we're in danger. And so our philosophy in Israel is preparedness. It's very, very important. The idea that we don't sugarcoat or look at things through rose-colored glasses. Oh, everything is okay. No, this is the way it is, right? And in order to live a rich life, and I don't mean financially, I mean in terms of enjoying life, you need to be prepared. Mm-hmm. And that's where shelters come in. And that's the vital role that we've been playing over the last 20 years, and the vital role that Friends of Israel has been partnering with us for the last 14 of those years. We've had a relationship for 14 years with Friends of Israel. Friends of Israel, through the generosity of supporters from Friends of Israel, have donated 107 bomb shelters.
That's amazing.
107 bomb shelters means that think of all the people who use those bomb shelters time and time again. Think of the families and friends who are, in a sense, connected to the people whose lives were saved and protected. I mean, at that point, you're talking about thousands of people who've been impacted by the gift of Friends of Israel. And so that's what we do. In a sense, our mission is very boring. It's about saving lives.
Yeah. I want to ask. You said something that struck me, and something I bring up often because Israel has been heavily criticized since October 7th, and it's getting worse and worse every day. And in my mind, I always say, well, where were you for the past 20 years? It's almost like you just woke up. Congratulations, here you are. And what they see is the destruction in Gaza, but without any content or context whatsoever of the back. And here you are saying, 20 years ago, I felt the calling to fulfill a mission to save lives because rockets were coming over from the same enemy that we have today, which is Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. I think that's so vital for people to understand, and I think probably most of our audience does, but maybe this will work its way out into the internet somewhere where somebody who disagrees with us will hear it. Mm-hmm. And I want them to hear that you've been pushing back against the constant attack of enemies for 20 years. And that's been going on since the day Israel was founded in 1948, but you've made it a life's mission to save lives from the enemies who have been attacking you for 20 years. I think it's so important for people to hear that.
Well, wait a second, Chris. LifeShield has been around for 20 years, and there's now a way for people to get into those shelters while they're living their life. But the bombs have been coming.
That's what I'm saying.
Longer.
Since the independence.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank God for the 20 years. We would like war over, but as long as it is to have protection. To those who don't agree with Israel, thank God that some Israelis from America, Canada, and other places said, what could we do to help? Because this stuff is killing us here.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? You were talking about the Yom Kippur War, hundreds of rockets, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now there's thousands. We witnessed Iran sending in one day. What was the number? I can't.
300 or something.
I thought it was 6. I had 600 in my mind, but
during the 12-day war back in June of last year, June of 25, you were talking between 100 to 500 rockets, and we're talking ballistic missiles, not rockets.
Yeah.
These are
school buses in the air.
These are exactly the size of a bus, size of a truck. They have a huge payload in there. They're able to. They actually launch into space and then they come back down. It's absolutely incredible. That's why they're able to, go that distance. The destruction is if you have a direct hit by one of those things, you're talking not just an apartment. You're talking an apartment block. Mm-hmm. Okay. Being destroyed. Mm-hmm. We saw the destruction.
Arad, I think that happened in Arad, didn't it?
Yeah, we see exactly when they get intercepted, for example. So now what's happening is that they get intercepted. That shell of a rocket, now the size, as you say, of a bus or a truck, is now falling from space at a tremendous speed and scattered, and that's a great danger as well. Not only that, but what we saw in this most recent war is something which, by the way, apparently is against the Geneva Convention. But it's a rocket that, once it's intercepted, actually breaks apart into many other smaller rockets. Did you know that's actually illegal?
I didn't know that. Really?
I did not know that.
Did you? Yeah, we didn't hear any outcry from the United Nations about that.
No, that's a really good point.
There was no vote about the fact that is a criminal act in the International Court of Law. As far as I'm concerned, it's not South Africa. Nobody has, because South Africa brought that against Israel.
Cluster bomb? Is that cluster?
That's the cluster bombs.
Yeah.
Okay, which have been the result of much damage and destruction. So that's what we've been dealing with. And as you say, we saw this coming 20 years ago when we first started Operation LifeShield, and we thought it would be a short-term thing. We dropped the name Operation because we see we're in it for the long haul, because Israel needs to stand strong. Mm-hmm. And finding quick solutions is not going to happen, because there's no such thing as quick solutions unless you're talking about the complete and utter destruction of our enemies. Short of that, we need to be continue prepared. So now we're LifeShield, and we continue going. when we were putting bomb shelters in northern Israel, when there was a period of quiet, I mean, in other words, after the Second Lebanon War, people were asking us, what are you doing? It's all's fine. I'm going, all's fine. You've got an organization called Hezbollah sitting just a few miles north, actually not even a few miles, sometimes a few hundred feet from where a Jewish community, an Arab community, an Israeli Arab community, both either Muslim or Christian, are sitting. And what are they doing? They're looking down at Israel and they're saying, we're just waiting for the right time. So I would say, what do you do if you have a next door neighbor and that next door neighbor is sharpening his knives and taking target practice, and every few days he says, Chris, Steve, I'm coming after you and your family. I don't know about you, but if I were you, I would be looking into secure locks and windows. I'd be taking my own target practice. I'd be getting a gun license. I'd be making sure there's a fence around my house. You're not going to sit quiet. That's basically what we've been doing with Hezbollah. And then we see the results. On October the 7th, 2023, as Hamas terrorists and their very willing accomplices, ordinary Gazans, were pouring into Israel, committing atrocities that we don't even have words in the English language to describe those levels of atrocities. Did you know that the same plans were supposed to be for Hezbollah to do the exact same thing in northern Israel? By the grace of God, they didn't, for reasons we don't even know, did not, in coordination with Hamas, pour into Israel. And by that time, we were already on high alert. So that entire plan couldn't happen.
Yeah, amazing.
Can you just, I want to go back. What was the first bomb shelter that you planted? And did you already have a vision to go beyond the first? What like when you planted that first, is what LifeShield is today, is it what you expected when you first planted that first bomb shelter?
Look, the very first few bomb shelters were actually in northern Israel, because this is right in the aftermath of, is the aftermath of the Second Lebanon War. We're talking 2006, going into 2007. We're talking now about rockets also from Gaza hitting Israel. These are the very, very first ones. We expected that it would be a short-term operation, short-term campaign, that things would work itself out. There would be perhaps a war, perhaps, I don't know, maybe peace. We have no idea what would happen. But in the meantime, we needed to help ordinary citizens to just be able to survive and be able to run to a place when there would be a siren. And it was very, very, very kind of a simple idea. Our first bomb shelter, one of our first bomb shelters, was at the Rebecca Seif Hospital in Tzfat in the Galilee. And it was actually at the helicopter landing pad at the hospital, where they were bringing in people who needed to be airlifted to hospital. And believe it or not, Hezbollah was targeting the hospital.
Really?
Yeah. Again, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's against the Geneva Convention. They were targeting the hospital. They knew it was a hospital. The air ambulance has a big red sign on it that shows that it's, for medical purposes, not for anything else. And so we needed a shelter where the injured, could actually be placed into a bomb shelter while the ambulance was ready to pick them up. So we figured this can't last too much longer. And here we are. But we realized at some point in time, no, we're here for the long term.
I got a question. How many bomb shelters has LifeShield put out? And what is the difference? How do they look any different now than they did when you first started?
Right. So we have placed 1,000 bomb shelters. Now, having said that, they vary in size. They can be very small shelters where maybe, 9 people go inside. We've also, fortified a hydrotherapy center in southern Israel where hundreds of people can be there. And we've also gone in and renovated underground bomb shelters that were in terrible condition. Those bomb shelters can house between 100 to 200 people. The average bomb shelter probably fits, between 20 to 30, 35 people. Nobody counts. I mean, the fact is that you do have standards. In other words, how much space per person. But let me tell you something.
If a bomb is coming,
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm sleeping on you.
No one, people.
And that says a lot for Steve,
That's
too.
right. I don't care about bathrooms. Even at that time, I don't even care.
People become instant friends.
All of a sudden.
And it is, but there is also a very, very serious side to that. I know, for example, in Netivot in southern Israel, we had just placed a bomb shelter. A siren went off. This bomb shelter was probably supposed to house, I would say, 10, 12 people. Well, they packed 30 in there. And actually, FOI actually visited that particular shelter. And some of the folks who may be listening, who were with me, may even recall the story of the man whose house is across the street from the shelter. And I want to say his 10-year-old daughter was in the shower at the time. And he literally, with a big blanket or towel, grabbed her in the shower and carried her and ran across the street from their house and ran into the bomb shelter. The rocket actually hit their home.
Wow.
Home was destroyed and their lives were saved. At the same time, that 10-year-old girl needs to deal with the fact that she's in a bomb shelter with nothing on except the blanket that she's wearing because of her father. And at the same time, there's no judgment. There's a sense of our lives are saved. Period. That's the important thing. And so, so we have different size shelters, and each shelter has its own story. We just placed 2 Friends of Israel shelters at a community in northern Israel. And we were inspired by that, by helping this community, because we were getting raw video footage of young families carrying their children to the car and then driving to the nearest shelter during a rocket attack. And we're thinking, this is the worst case scenario you could ever possibly imagine. The last place you want to be is inside a vehicle when the rockets are coming in, because your car could turn into a fireball. And yet you're a parent and you're sitting there going, wow, we have nowhere to go to close by. We're going to get into the car. That's called serious desperation.
Mm-hmm.
And we responded right away, and Friends of Israel partnered with us. And now they don't have to get into their cars and go to a shelter. So we've been able to, so it's so interesting because when we talk about numbers, Steve, we can talk about 107 shelters from FOI. We can talk about the 1,000 shelters that we've placed in. That's all true. But I think about that one shelter. I think about that one family now that can now run to a shelter within a few seconds, calm down, and say, okay, we're here. Let the danger pass.
Well, we know here at Friends of Israel, Jim Showers, when he has gone over to Israel, and you have allowed him and other staff people to dedicate these.
Right.
Oftentimes, people in the community, they see the plaque that's up there that several organizations sponsor these, and you've been kind enough to put Friends of Israel plaques on the ones that we sponsor. But they come thanking us, thanking you, because they want the story to be told. It's not just mortar. It's not just a little
Concrete,
building,
yeah.
concrete. It has a story, or it will have a story. And the people in that community, they connect with this now, knowing that they do have a place to go. That's so important.
And they turn these into it almost becomes, it's not like just a bomb shelter that sits,
Right.
they almost adopt it into the community. I see that they paint on them and they put murals on them, or I just always am amazed at how it's not just this concrete block thing that's out there. It almost kind of adapts into the community.
Oh, most definitely. They definitely become multi-use spaces. If it's in a kindergarten, for example, you'll see mats. Kids can actually rest in them. One of the nice things about bomb shelters, you remember, Israel is usually a very hot place in terms of temperature. And nice thing about a concrete bomb shelter is it really keeps the room nice and cold and comfortable. It's just a great place to have a nap or get work done. I've seen people in there just kind of have study groups. All of our shelters have lighting inside because they're powered by solar panels. And
Genius.
so there's
That's amazing. I didn't even know that.
yeah, so they're all lit, which means any time of the day or night, you're going into a place that's safe and bright. And, as you say, they're painted, which makes they can be more positive experiences to relate to. I saw one that was turned into a dojo, like for a karate studio.
That's amazing.
And of course, let's face it, during this recent war, people moved in with their sleeping bags, and they moved into FOI shelters, and they would be there for days on end. We were told by social workers afterwards that made all the difference in their PTSD recovery. The fact that they were able to go into an FOI shelter and know that they were safe. Yes, they may have had trauma afterwards, but that the level of trauma was lessened, and the period of time for treatment would be fewer. So that's really, really positive too.
Let's go back a little bit too. The reason why they need bomb shelters is today when you build a home in Israel, the Israeli code requires you to have a bomb shelter or a safe room that functions as a bomb shelter. But in the past, that wasn't the case. So there are a lot of homes that don't have those particular safe rooms. Is that correct? Or
exactly. You build a new home today, a new apartment building, something like that. You're gonna have to put in a bomb shelter in your apartment or in your house,
which usually functions as a room. Like it's some of them, they're not just like don't they often like one room will be isolated as the safe room, but it could also be your kid's room where the bed is or something like that.
In our home, my wife's home office is inside the bomb shelter, which means that during time of war, she's displaced. Her office is displaced because the mattresses go into her office, and she's got to move her computer and chair somewhere else. But yeah, that's what happens. But let's remember that according to the official comptroller's report, I mean, I'm talking about the comptroller for Israel's report that came out about 6 weeks ago, 1/3 of Israelis, that's 3 million Israelis, do not have access to a bomb shelter.
Wow.
That means that they're living in a home that was not built recently. It was built before the building code established the construction of a bomb shelter. So they're living in an older space. It also includes access to public shelters. So that's 3 million Israelis, including Jewish Israelis and Arab Israelis, simply don't have a bomb shelter. That's a very, 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 very high number. And I think that one of the amazing things that we're able to do is to bring that number down so that at least in the public space, there's a public shelter that they can go to.
Yeah, can we transition for a minute too? Because it all kind of still flows within the theme of Shmuel. What you do with LifeShield and bomb shelters is, you established this 20 years ago, but I heard somebody recently say that Israel hasn't had a normal day since March 2020, and that's when the pandemic started. And I can remember feeling as somebody who travels to Israel and leads tours, I'm always anxious to get back over there with a group. And when the pandemic hit, you wonder when you're going to go back. And finally went back, and tourism started coming back again, and everybody was getting excited. And then boom, all of a sudden October 7th happened, and that kick-started a series, the war. And then it felt like maybe things were coming back again. And then the Iran war started. So, can you connect our listeners to the Israeli resolve? I think this is important because, there's a resolve among Israelis, but I'm sure they're tired as well. Could you connect us to that emotional state of the Israeli people right now?
Right. Well, I think one of the ways that that Israelis have that resolve is that ultimately during times of crisis, there is incredible unity. Incredible unity. Even now during this recent war with Iran, the polls show that between 70 to 80% and even higher of Israelis across the entire political spectrum, across the religious spectrum, across the cultural spectrum, were all in favor and supported the government in this war. Can you imagine that?
That's called a miracle.
It's a miracle.
Yeah. The Messiah might return soon,
you had 80% of Israelis saying, yeah, we agree with this. And what that means is that we support this, which means that the level of disagreement and discourse is lower, which means that there's much more sense of, hey, I can relate to you. We can relate to the other. And I think that kind of resolve is very, very important. I saw, for example, certainly during the beginning of immediately following October 7th, 2023, and I spent, my wife reminds me, and she says, I didn't see you for a year. I didn't see you for a year after October 7th. And she's right. because I really did spend about a year in the Gaza Belt area, just going from Hamal to Hamal. Hamal is a command war room to war room. Each region has its own command center. Usually, it's in an underground facility or in a bunker or in a bomb shelter, and that's where all the security and actually, for that matter, all administration is taking place. And I would literally go from one to another, and that's true. And I saw this unity that was taking place. This we call it in Hebrew achdut, which means brotherhood, which applies to men and women. This idea that at the end of the day, we are Am Yisrael. We are the nation of Israel. And we have our differences, clearly, politically, religiously, culturally. But you know what? When we're being threatened, we're together. And we saw this during COVID. We saw this, it was very interesting because I'm from Canada originally. And I was frankly horrified by the response of how Canadians were dealing with COVID. And this sense of like, okay, everybody just kind of like, hide in your own homes and just ignore everybody else. And in Israel, there was a national campaign led by the Prime Minister of Israel to make sure that you literally took care of people who were isolated. Don't forget about the elderly. Don't forget about the sick. Go and literally, with masks, go and visit them. We have actual videos of the Prime Minister leading personal visits to shut-in elderly during COVID.
That's amazing.
It's a completely different idea. In other words, we may have this thing going on, but like it says in the Bible, do not forget me in my old age.
Right? And even before the October 7th, the nation was split over that Supreme Court issue. I mean, they were divided. I was there, and people were messaging me from the States like, hey, well, we're watching the news. There's a huge protest in Jerusalem, and I think it's down the road from your hotel. And I look out and I go, I don't really see it. And I see people down the road. I go, oh, it's, I think it's just the cameras in front of everybody. It makes it look like a bigger crowd. But they were divided.
Yep.
And then October 7th happened, and that division went away immediately.
Instantly. I was in there was one of the leading organizations of the anti-government or the anti-judicial reform camp was an organization called Brothers in Arms. And they were very well organized, and they were known as the leaders of the anti-government camp. On October the 8th, the Brothers in Arms organization completely pivoted and became a force of unity. And I actually remember I was in the command center in Chof Ashkelon in southern Israel. And the security chief invited me, and he says, come here, we're doing a Zoom call right now. And I look at it, and sure enough, there's the three leaders of the Brothers in Arms organization. And what are they saying? They're saying, what's needed? Well, how can we help?
It's just amazing. Do you have anything you want to add there before I go on?
No, I think this is one time Jewish people agree.
I think there's also some. We can. It's true, and it's very. It is humorous because and I think that we can also be in a place of disagreement, but we can also go past that. Mm-hmm. We can go to a place of simplicity and just reach out. The idea of just being there and saying, I know you're completely politically polar on the other side of what I believe. I'm religious, you're secular. I'm Ashkenazi, you're Sephardi. Whatever the case may be. You want to know something? All that stuff is just, it's ridiculous. We're here because we're Am Yisrael, we're the nation of Israel. And I'm here just to hold your hand. I'm here just to give you a hug. I'm here to stand with you and to acknowledge your pain and not even to necessarily even offer advice or suggestions. I'm just here to be with you as Am Echad, to be here as one people. And that's what people really have been doing and continue to be doing. And so there's much more of you sense in Israel, much more of a sense of, and I think part of it maybe is we have a common narrative that is both pain and victory. So you have a situation where during the war with Gaza, for example, where so many people were called up to the reserves. So you had situations where weddings, I'll just give this one example, where weddings had been planned. So you have this wedding. What do you got to do? You got to book the wedding hall, and you got to book the band, and you got to book the caterer, right? But on the day of the wedding, so the bride's there and the groom is there, but like half of the guests aren't there, can't come because they're in the army. And there became this kind of really cool kind of thing that took place where you would just show up to some stranger's wedding.
Oh, really?
I like it.
And you
A
would be,
wedding crasher.
you would be welcomed with such love and
It's
such
amazing.
it's like, thank you for coming. I know you don't know anybody here. Please. And I did this on several occasions. My kids did this a lot, where you would just show up, you'd find out there'd be a wedding. You have no idea who those people are. You show up at that wedding just because you want to be part of their simcha, be part of their joy. And half of the wedding party can't be there because they're busy. They're busy at war. They're being called up, and that just goes to show, I don't know anybody, but I'm family.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was listening to a general not long ago, and he said one of the most amazing things is that normally in the war rooms in Israel, all of the clocks, whenever they would fight their own battles, are set to Israeli time. But this is the first time in Israel's history where all the clocks are set to Zulu time because they're fighting alongside America. And that war that they're fighting is against Iran. I'd like your take on what's going on with the partnership with America. I've heard so many critics say we're always fighting Israel's wars. I don't really ever remember America ever stepping foot into Israel's wars. I know that we've supported them along the way, but I don't ever remember fighting any of Israel's wars. This one, though, is a partnership against a common enemy. And I'm personally very excited and thankful to see the partnership and alliance between Israel and America. But I want your thoughts on that from an Israeli perspective on America and Israel's joint attack against the Iranian regime.
Right. So first of all, I'm not completely sure that that America is fighting Israel's war. I think what's happening is America is fighting its war against Iran, and it has very important parameters as to why it's fighting Iran. I think that America, especially now we see under the current leadership, understands that Iran really is the number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and that terrorism reaches into the American citizens as
100%.
well as to American forces. And so it is definitely in the United States' interest to finally do what other administrations have said that they would do and put an end to it, and at least certainly bring them back and knock them back to a time where, we're literally 1 minute to midnight before the breakout of nuclear weapons. And what that means is that when you have the number one country that supports terrorism with their finger on the button that can press and launch that kind of power, okay, you've changed everything in the world. Okay, we're literally looking at that. You literally have to look and say, it's not about the $4 a gallon, price. It's about what happens after Iran happens to have nuclear weapons. What kind of changes in the entire world will happen? And I think that's the incredible insight of President Trump. And I don't need to be political. I'm not an American. I don't vote. Okay, but I'm looking at it just as the facts. That instead of just talking about it, he's doing something about it. Israel's war with Iran is existential, and I don't know if if the United States can necessarily say the same thing. Israel understands that, as opposed to other enemies, including Hamas, which is of course driven by Iran, but even with Hamas, with everything that they've done, it still does not mean the end of the existence of Israel. However, Iran with nuclear capabilities could mean the end of the existence of Israel. That means it's existential. So we have a little bit of a different angle on that. The other thing, too, is the issue of ballistic missiles. Those things interrupt our lives, okay? And we are within their range. It's true, the United States and Western Europe could also be within the range of ballistic missiles before long. But for Israel, it's a much more immediate issue. So what we have found is that the United States and America have this common enemy, and this is a great opportunity to work together. And you're absolutely right. In terms of this level of working together, it has not happened before. This type of coordination in terms of actual warfare, this is a first. Will it continue going forward? It's a good question. It may depend on what happens in the White House going forward, and also what happens in the Knesset, in the Prime Minister's office. But in this particular moment, in this particular window of history, this cooperation is happening, and it's nothing short of historic.
Is there a change happening in the Middle East? You know, I just look at how the administration, the Trump administration, has invited NATO to be a part of making sure that this ends Iran, and there's some type of change that happens for the positive for Israel and for the West. But it seems like he's been more, what's the word I'm looking for? That Trump's been more prone to move toward countries like the Saudis, UAE, you know, which means that there's almost like this alliance that's forming in the Middle East that includes Israel as well. That I think if you would have told me this 10 years ago, I might have laughed out loud to you. But this is the whole dynamic is changing for alliances globally.
Well, Iran has attacked what we would think they would never attack.
Right.
And NATO, as it relates to Great Britain, Germany, Italy, Spain, they're not interested. And these other nations who are being threatened, they are interested in stopping Iran.
Right. It's really when you see it close up, and it's I don't say surprising, but it's very unfortunate that Western Europe, specifically the countries that you've mentioned, don't understand what the danger of Iran is, and for themselves included, there's a short-sightedness, to be sure. That short-sightedness becomes extremely clear when you understand that they can threaten you, and they actually have. That in the Emirates, specifically in Dubai, they've actually had more missile attacks than in Israel. There's been more destruction there, and they don't have any shelters there, and they don't have a system to repel and to intercept missiles, and so they've been a phenomenal punching bag for that's hard to climb down from. That's hard.
And they just left OPEC. They just left OPEC. I mean, it's huge. The UAE.
Yeah. So they're it's very, very clear to them. Saudi Arabia, the same thing. It becomes very, very clear. But we still haven't figured out how to dot those I's and cross those T's when it comes to any solid agreement yet. Mm-hmm. But as you say, Chris, I think we are moving towards. There is a possibility, and I think we see this in the current administration. We see President Trump has a vision for what the Middle East could look like. And when we talk about the Abraham Accords, and we talk about expanding the Abraham Accords and who could come into that tent, there's tremendous potential. Do you know that there is a pipeline?
Yeah.
An oil pipeline that exists from the time, I think it must have been during the time of the British.
Really?
That goes back before the founding of the State of Israel, when England and France kind of like had a mandate over the entire Middle East before countries became independent. And there's a pipeline that wouldn't take too much to get up and running that takes oil from Saudi Arabia all the way to Israel.
To Haifa, right?
To Haifa. Yeah, I think it's
exactly.
in Haifa. Mm-hmm.
And from Haifa, that's it. From that moment, you could have oil cargo ships, taking it from there. You wouldn't need the Strait of Hormuz.
Amazing. And so it's already, I didn't realize it's an already existing pipeline from the British mandate.
It's got to be fixed.
It's got to be updated.
But it's there. It's there.
You notice, we can do this.
That's right.
We can do it. We can
It's
do
not
it.
too big of a deal.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's a huge operation.
A little tweak here, a little thing here, and bada bing.
I think it's more, you know what it is? It's like Theodore Herzl. I see it's so lovely. I see this picture in your office.
Bearded brothers
the
behind
bearded
me.
brother,
That's
Theodore
right.
Herzl. And it even says below there, a dreamer. Well, he said, if you will it, it is no longer a dream.
That's right.
And I think that that's one of the great attributes of Israel, and certainly we see this also in the current tenets of the White House, that if you really, really will something, if you really want it to happen, it doesn't need to be, oh, I wish, oh, I dream, if only. it can really happen. So it's true that pipeline may need some tweaking and some upgrading, renovation. I know a few contractors who may be able to help with that.
I do. That transitions to a place, another argument that having you here is very important, and that is there's a lot of talk in America about, maybe we shouldn't be giving so much to Israel. And they use the word giving and they use the word helping. And we at the Jew and Gentile podcast, the two people that we are, along with our 7 listeners, we talk all the time saying, wait a minute, this isn't just United States giving money to Israel and that they get nothing in return. We call it an investment. And there's a number of things. I sent this to Chris. It's part of our, I'm the producer, Chris. Mm-hmm. I am the producer.
Produce, my friend.
I don't know what I'm producing, but it's not a charity. This isn't, there's a number of bullet points that I'd like Shmuel to comment. You too, Chris.
Well, this is the thing that we hear too. Oh, we give these people $3.8 billion a year and they have free medical care. They have beautiful roads. They have this, but that doesn't mean it. That's not what the money goes to.
I like the analogy. If you take a look, and I'm sure it's more than 7, Steve, but I'm sure
they rotate in and out.
Yeah.
It's a,
fine. So
it's a rolling room of
or
7.
7 plus add a few zeros.
We start off with 7, and then as soon as Chris says, "And here's our Jewish friend Steve," then they have 3.
Yeah.
It starts off with 7, and then we get 3.
He sang "Happy Birthday" to me last week, and we haven't gotten anybody to
That's
listen.
right.
So.
Okay, so let's hope and pray that we can add a few zeros. But
That's right.
if you were to take a map, you look at a map of Israel. If you look at the borders in the map of Israel, and someone, I thought this is a brilliant way of looking at it. It looks like, right? It's the largest U.S. aircraft carrier in the Middle East.
That is, I've heard that. That's really good.
And I think I think it's cute and everything, but I think it means something. And it's to your point. It's about saying that Israel really is, and long before we've been doing this military cooperation, Israel has been for the United States, has been its most secure, most stable, and its most relied upon ally in the Middle East. So all this funding that the people are talking about, it's not a question of giving. It's truly an investment, and I have a feeling that Israel's actually giving more back to.
Well, that's what I want to tell you. For those who might be listening who work for Lockheed Martin or Boeing or Raytheon or General Dynamics, Israel takes the money, and the United States knows this. They give it to them, and then Israel has to buy, which they're happy to do. They turn around and buy planes and materials, whatever they need, and it's a reciprocal thing. I've had many Christian friends who are in these businesses who are going to Israel all the time. In fact, our own Mike Stollard, who is our international vice president, when he got out of college at the University of Alabama as a rocket scientist, his first job, he was able to go to Israel and deal with the IDF because his company sent him there because Israel was an integral connector to a lot of their business. So of the $3.8 billion that goes there, there's people in Lockheed and Boeing, etc. The F-35s alone, Israel's the first to use them and then go back to the United States and say, you didn't do such a good job here. We do have more than one opinion amongst our people, and our pilots went up and said, this didn't work too well in combat, but we have a fix-it, and we're happy to share that with the United States because this is their equipment. All of a sudden, Israel's like the minor leagues of military where they're able to fix and say, get back to the, as Donald Trump would call it, the best, we're the best military. Well, if they are the best military, and I hope they are, Israel's played a key role in them becoming so good.
Doing all the beta testing.
That's exactly right.
290,000 jobs for that F-35. So when you send that money over, the $3.8 billion, the money's designed to come back in order to benefit both people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people sending their kids to college on money that was sent to Israel that is buying back stuff so that they could buy groceries and send their kids to college.
The point is that it's not the mentality among the American mind, who again doesn't have the context, Shmuel, is that money's going over to benefit the poor and the hungry, or the healthcare program or whatever. Like, it just goes into the coffers of the Israeli government,
or going to fund the the attacks on innocent Palestinians and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that Israel, that somehow the United States has a hand in that, which is of course not the case.
Yeah, but this money actually is a partnership, and it's a very unique one. Because, Israel, when you look at history, Israel actually had a choice in the past on who they would choose their alliances with. A lot of the Jewish people that came and made Aliyah came from Eastern Europe. They came from the former Soviet Union, and they're coming in. They could have easily angled themselves toward Russia, but Russia started supplying arms to the Arab neighbors, and over time, even from the very beginning, when Truman approved a Jewish state. President Truman, Israel in an area of the world where you have to choose to either side with the East or side with the West, they sided with the West, and this has become a partnership over decades that has benefited us. The return on investment on these monies, Steve, is beyond what we could ever imagine if you think about a return on investment.
Right.
So, anyway, Shmuel, I don't know if you want to add to that or not.
Just to say that you're absolutely right. There has been decision making over the years. Israel just celebrated its 78th anniversary. This Yom Ha'atzmaut, this Israel Independence Day, and over those many years, we have, on the one hand, we've reached out to any country in the world that will partner with us. A lot of countries will partner with us and not want to make it public. By the way, there's a lot of kind of under the radar kind of arrangements, especially in the area of agriculture and economics and medicine. These are in science and technology. These are partnerships that sometimes it comes out and sometimes they just prefer to let it kind of like keep it quiet. But there was an understanding that there is this very deep connection between the United States and Israel. There were shared values, shared concepts of right and wrong. And the idea that together we can really do some really amazing things.
Well, Shmuel just brought up Israel's 78th birthday. And I think about that and realize, Chris, I know our listeners know about it, but it just bears repeating. The Friends of Israel was founded before there was an Israel. Mm-hmm. That's astounding, where people they're rejecting Israel today. And they're questioning Israel, and they don't like Israel. And yet there's people that have supported Israel. But we at Friends of Israel have supported Israel before there was an Israel. And the reason is this. It's the book. And I just find that so amazing. This book has changed individual lives time after time after time. But you go back to 1938, things were brewing in Germany. Things were happening. And as a result of those things that were happening, awful things, Christians who were just reading their Bible, where Israel is mentioned over and over and over again, they said, you know what? We have to do Operation LifeShield started, and now it's LifeShield. It started because we have to do something. And Friends of Israel started, what can we do? Same question. What could we do for the Jewish people? There is no country. What could we do for them? And the Friends of Israel was established with the name Israel before there was a country. Why? Because of prophecy, because of the Bible. And isn't it interesting that Shmuel has become a friend of the Friends of Israel? He has spoken at our prophecy conferences. He comes and gives people a break. Hey, they're in the book of Daniel. They're counting 70 weeks. I don't even know what's up and down. At least we got a person we could relate to with cement, and he's providing safety. And okay, we got a break here, and we're introduced to LifeShield. But it's because of the book, Chris.
Yeah.
And I think that's significant. Israel is a nation coming back as a nation because of God's promise. And we can't go away, can't even get to the Yiddish word of the day. Here we have a scribe who the deepest respect for the word of God, and it's because of scribes like Shmuel.
And we got a lesson today, too.
That we can rely on the text being the text, since we don't have the original How do we know that it really is the Word of God? We got a scribe, Chris, our own scribe. And boy, did we! Why don't you review some of the questions that were asked?
Well, your wife Alice asked amazing questions.
Amazing questions.
I mean, they were detailed. But the thing that I took away from our conversation, because now we're kind of moving from
let him give his website. You got to give his website.
Both of them.
Yeah.
But we kind of are moving from the politics, and now we're moving into something personal. It's all personal to you, but this is something deep because it's God's word, and you're a scribe. And what I took away from what you shared with us personally during lunch is, what you do is something that comes from your heart, but it's also something that has to be just right. It's an art, but it also has to be done with diligence and respect and honor and done the right way. And maybe
copying
you want to
the
share,
text.
Copying the text, and maybe you want to share a little bit with our audience about that side of who you are as well.
Okay, it's definitely my passion. The word for a scribe, because scribe means literally to write down, right? Interestingly enough, in Hebrew, the name is Sofer, which doesn't mean to write down, although it means sefer, which means a book. But a sofer actually comes from the word lispor, which means to count, which is not the same thing as writing. And what is a scribe doing when he's counting? He's counting space. He's counting the space that makes up a letter. And that space may include the parts that he's actually writing using a turkey feather turned into a quill and black ink on parchment. And that could be the part that he's writing and filling in. And it could also mean the white space. In fact, we talk about writing the Hebrew letters in terms of black fire on white fire and white fire on black fire, so that the black fire is the ink itself, and the white part is the unwritten space. And together, they make the shape of the letter. That shape of the letter determines what the word is, and that's the word of God. That's the word of God that we received on Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago. And the goal and the role of the scribe is to make sure that it's accurate so that we can understand exactly what God wants us to do. What does God want Chris to do? What does God want Steve to do? What does God want Shmuel to do? And we've been given this gift, this book, as our guide. It's our roadmap. Okay? So if you pulled out a roadmap and whoever printed that roadmap had been just a little bit too creative, and as a result, the exit ramp from the highway was not the correct one, it could be anything from an inconvenience to actually dangerous. Yeah. And so that's the same thing as what the job of the scribe is. The job of the scribe is to keep us on the map and keep us on the right direction by making sure the same letters that were done. So it's an amazing story. It was after you're talking about after 1948. We're just talking about 78 years. So it was after 1948, after the Independence War, when there was a huge ingathering of Jews from all over the world. And I have to say that FOI, and I tell the FOI story every time I put up a dedication plaque. It's an incredible thing. I come along and I put up the dedication plaque if I'm doing it on my own, if I'm not with someone from the FOI. And I'm proud to be able to discuss the history of FOI. And I'm talking about, as you said, that this was founded before the founding of the State of Israel as a way to save the lives of so many Jews who were escaping the Holocaust and give them an ability to come to the United States and survive. And many of those Jews actually made Aliyah. So 1948, Jews from all over the world are making Aliyah, from India and from America, from Russia, from China, and from just everywhere you can imagine. And there was a rabbi, his name was Rabbi Kahana, who was the rabbi of Mount Zion in Jerusalem. And he was the rabbi for the religious department of the Israeli government. And he said, we have an incredible opportunity. I want to examine the Torah scrolls. And so he asked each community, can I please borrow the Torah scroll from your synagogue? It will be treated with great respect. I just want to research something and I'll return it to you. And he had for approximately a year and then he returned them. Torah scrolls from all the Jewish communities that had not met one another since the dispersion 2,000 years earlier. And in each of these communities, there were Torah scribes, and they all wrote their Torahs. And he compared them, and he found that of the 304,805 letters in a Torah scroll, that each and every Torah scroll was identical, with the exception of 6 letters, and those letters were all vowels. In other words, it did not change the meaning of the words.
Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
You know, the thing that I took away from our time together earlier as well, you're talking about being a scribe, is that there is the component of the mechanical side. You're making sure everything's done just right. Like you're a detailed. You were going through like before you move on to the next letter. You have been ordained to know that not that word. That letter is kosher. It's good. And now I'm moving on to the next letter. There's a mechanical side to that because you have to get that just right. But then coupled with that is the devotional side to it as well. Maybe you want to share about that a little bit, because that really struck me that, you know, because Alice asked a great question. Are you paying attention to what you're writing as your
letters or the meaning?
Or the meaning. And you had said you kind of go in and out, but you got to be careful, because when you go in and out, you can make mistakes too.
Right. And so at the end of the day, you got to be focused on the letter and try and separate yourself from the content, even though you can't help it because you are in the story. So the emotional part, the devotional part, is like when I'm writing a Megillah Esther, when I'm writing the scroll of Esther, I'm writing the same words in the same way as Mordecai wrote it. No different. Dictated by Esther herself. Can you imagine that? All these years later, and I'm writing in exactly the same way. I can't help at that moment to feel a deep spiritual connection to Mordecai himself. I'm literally doing exactly what how many professions can claim doing that? When I'm writing or repairing a Torah scroll, whoa. Yeah. I'm writing the same way that Moshe wrote the Torah scroll, and all the scribes since him. This chain, this link that goes all the way back to Mount Sinai. It's absolutely incredible. So on the one hand, you're bound up in that spiritual, that emotion that's going on. As I mentioned before, your body temperature increases. You got to have a fan or air conditioning on to keep yourself nice and cool, because you're just humming at a very different level. And yet, you're right. Mechanically, technically, I can't move on to the next letter until that letter is kosher. In other words, fit. In other words, 100% perfect. It has to have what's called surat ha'ot, the identity of that letter. Why? Because if I am sloppy, if my point isn't sharp enough, if there's a question as to what that letter is, what can happen? Well, number one, it can offset for generations, right? The meaning of what the Word of God is, but it can do something else. You see, whenever I put on tefillin, right, the phylacteries on my arm, whenever I put up a mezuzah on my door, right, whenever I am making the blessing over the Torah scroll, you are evoking the name of God in that blessing. And now, if the Torah scribe has made a mistake or has admitted something, that person is now making a blessing falsely, and he doesn't even know it. And you are doing an incredible disservice. So we understand that that's not just some kind of courtesy. It's something that really is connected to something much higher. That God expects us to be in this precise. We talked before, Steve, about whether God is about that precision, 100% or nothing, or is there some kind of wiggle room? And I answered that both have to exist in the same space. But in this particular case, when we're talking about God's word, it's God's word has to be 100%. Oh, how do you actually interpret it? Oh,
Now you got some differences.
this you and I can have a conversation, and we can disagree, and we can say, I see the word of God meaning this. And Chris, you can say, but I see the word of God meaning that. We can discuss it, and we can argue, and we can, we'll see what happens. But the actual word in which we are focused on must be precise.
Chris, we just had, he's elevated the Jew and Gentile podcast.
It's the next level.
To a level very few times. I remember Randall Price elevated it.
Yeah.
He elevated it. That Shmuel has gone into the Dr. Randall Price. We maybe had 3 or 4 people who've been able to do that. So Shmuel, thank you for doing that. Chris and I, we are glad to have someone, and I want our listeners to really think about this. Is what they've just heard from Shmuel is a way of us really reloving the Word of God, knowing that it's true. Mm-hmm. It's accurate. It is because of how God has burdened through the ages these scribes who have protected the Word of God to the point that when as I'm chronologically going through the Word right now, I'm in the middle of Samuel and Chronicles. As it's chronology, David I just read yesterday, Absalom, my son Absalom. I did the pain of a father over a son. I know that story is exactly the way it happened because of scribes like Shmuel.
It's amazing. And Shmuel, you have a responsibility too, because in learning about the Jewish community over the last 25 years, it's been amazing to me to see the value of God's name. When it's spoken out loud, it's often Hashem, the name. Mm-hmm. They value it with great detail. To even when they write out the name God, it's G-D out of a respect. But you have the responsibility to write the name out, and that makes that parchment that you're writing on much different than any other piece of paper that an Israeli or Jewish person writes the name God on. It separates it.
Right. And the moment you're writing God's name, you're actually under additional rules. There's different things going on.
Oh, there's different rules for that.
Yeah, additional. In other words, there's different additional. In other words, it's all the rules that are already there.
You got to add some.
Yeah. In other words, all the rules that are already there, now you're adding a whole another level. Because as you just said, you're now writing the name of God. And the name of God is God's business card. In other words, God is basically saying, I don't know if you're ever really, truly going to know anything about me. Mm-hmm. Maybe, there's just so much going on here. But I'm going to give you a little gift. I'm going to give you my name. And I'm going to give you my name that you can savor, and you can love, and you can hold, and you can write. It's so amazing, and say it over. And at the same time, we're kind of like, oh, but wait a second. I don't know if I want to get that close.
We don't want to get burned like that guy got burned.
Yeah, you don't want
to. Where's how close do I get to this? This could be radioactive. You know what I'm saying? So I want to have. That's what you say. We substitute letters and things like that, and it's not. It's the opposite. It's giving great respect. Mm-hmm. It's very often how we address royalty sometimes in the third person. We talk directly to the king, say Your Highness. In other words, it's in the third person. So we does the Highness does His Majesty wish to have his breakfast today? So in the same way, we have that. There's a certain distance, And at the same time, God is our Father. So how do we balance that? At the same time, I remember my dad saying to me, my late father saying to me, I don't want you to be my best friend. I want to be your father. I don't, you have enough best friends. I'm your father. And there's something to that, So there's all sorts of different rules and additional rules when it comes to that, and it has to be a whole different level. You have to have focus. As a matter of fact, the halacha, the law teaches us that if you're writing God's name and the king, in other words, or the president or the prime minister walks by you and says hello, that you don't answer the king while you're writing God's name.
Where did that? Is that Rambam? Was that who? Where's that law come from?
It's coming from our rabbis from 2,000 years ago who are writing that in there and saying, this is how serious it is. And, it's to the point where, forget, your kid running in, wanting to know if he can have an ice cream from the freezer. It's the king walking by and saying, hey, Steve, how hello there. Mm-hmm. You actually continue writing God's name. There's that sense of that. That's the level of importance, and there's much more to it even than that. And the fact that you can't erase God's name, so that if you have made a mistake, it's not like for example, in the Torah that you can correct things. When it comes to God's name, you're going to have to literally cut out what you've written. And you're going to have to bury it in a Jewish cemetery, or put it in what's called a geniza, which is a sacred storage space. And then you're going to have to put on the back of that, now that cut out, you're going to have to put what's called a tlai, which is a patch, and now write it again. You want to avoid that.
Yeah.
You definitely.
Hey, this has been a joy. Really quick, Shmuel, 2 websites I want you to give our listeners. What's LifeShield's website, if you don't mind?
LifeshieldShelters.org.
All right, LifeShieldShelters.org. I want our listeners to go there, and they can also go to foi.org, and they can connect with LifeShield through that way as well if you want to help build a bomb shelter. And what's your website for your Scribal side of life?
Okay, and that's sacredscrolls.net.
Sacredscrolls.net.
That's right.
All right, sacredscrolls.net. All right, now I'm going to put you on a spot here because at the very end of every podcast we have what's called the Yiddish Word of the Day. Now Steve already has a Yiddish word picked out, which we're going to do that fit in what we were talking about. But I want to ask you first: do you have a favorite Yiddish word?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, let's go.
Schlep.
Schlep. My God, you schlep, my friend. You schlep.
It has. The word itself immediately denotes being hunched over, and you're
100%.
You're dragging this thing, that suitcase that the wheel has fallen off on one of them, scraping on the pavement.
He's talking my language,
and you've got going along with the shop. You got a pekala. You got a pekala.
Keep going. Keep going.
Pekala. And you know what? At some point, you're going to kvetch about it.
100%.
And you're going to say, "Oi."
Where's our kvetch?
Yeah, here we go. Our 4 stages of Jewish exercise.
There you go.
You stretch,
kvetch,
schwitz, and then plotz. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. But I think that the other word is, I'm going to say my other favorite Yiddish word is kvel. Kvel. And this is something, as a grandfather of 3 grandchildren, I really kvel. I have nachas and great pride.
Unbelievable!
And this is, and I get to, be able to be with them in kvel, and we get to spielen together. We get to play together, and at some point in time, they're going to be, it's going to be showing spät. It's going to be late, and so
look at this. I can't even keep up anymore.
I'm going to say showing spät. But at some point, they're going to be so tired that even when they don't hear me, I'm going to be able to say, my süße Kind, my Tirekind, my sweet child, my precious child.
Go schluffy.
Go gay schluffy.
100%.
All right, but wait a minute though, Steve, because you have a good one.
Well, we've been talking about money.
That's right, and we want to make sure people understand, because we want some of that to go over to LifeShield,
Exactly. We got Gelt for operation. Gelt is our Yiddish word for the day.
Which means money.
Which means money. We want Gelt for operation, or now just called LifeShield. We want Gelt for American investment into Israel, because we'll get more blessing. We want Gelt for our Polish trip, and we want Gelt for Equip.
There you go.
We want Gelt.
That's right. We give everything out for free.
That's right.
It's time for a little Gelt. And
we don't ask much.
That's right.
And we don't ask often. But come on, could you spare some?
Cut it height. All right, well, you can send your Gelt to foiequip.org. There's a little donate button there. You can also go to lifeshieldShelters.org or sacredscrolls.net. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for being a part of the Friends of Israel, Jew and Gentile podcast. Be sure to check out our free classes that you can be a part of. Coming up, the 70th week of Daniel.
No charge.
No charge. Go to foiequip.org. Don't forget to get your free stickers. Again, free stickers by texting us at 424-444-1948. Don't forget to stop by LifeshieldShelters.org, SacredScrolls.net. So many things to do, so little time. Shmuel, thank you so much for being with us, my friend.
Joy to be here. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Great to see you. Hey, we'll see you next week, everybody.